Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be talking about some books that I read in part of April, all of May, and part of June that I really enjoyed, and I highly recommend all of these books, and I'm also really excited to be talking about them today, and these books will be in no particular order. And I also would love to hear what you've been reading recently, so make sure to comment some of your recent reads down below. I'm starting off with The Wedding Dress Sewing Circle by Jennifer Ryan. Grace lives in Aldhurst Village and she has just found her mother's wedding dress. With the war going on, there are not enough rations to buy a new wedding dress. So you either have to wear a used dress you already have, your army uniform, or wear a used wedding dress, if one is available. At 24, Grace has almost given up hope of getting married, but then Lawrence proposed. The reason Lawrence proposed and wants to marry Grace is because Grace is a good vicar's daughter who Lawrence thinks will make a good vicar's wife. As Grace and her father are looking at the dress, they realize that it is full of holes and in the state it is in, it cannot be worn, so Grace's father suggests that Grace take it to the sewing circle to see what can be done about the dress. Cressida Westcott lives in London and owns a design shop very close to her home. This allows her to put all of her time and effort into her work, but with the war going on, Cressida feels that most of her clientele is leaving the city, and Cressida also feels that she could never leave the city. Her whole life is here in London. One of Cressida's friends asks her about the death of Eustace Westcott. Cressida said it was a much older brother who didn't approve that she wanted to make a life of her own and also didn't approve of her fiance who died in the war many years ago. Cressida feels like she wouldn't be welcome in the Westcott home even after Eustace is gone and his two children are still living there. The person that Violet Westcott was supposed to marry was shot down and killed over Malta. Now Violet thinks there are no eligible men left for her to marry. One day Violet is reading a magazine and saw Cressida Westcott, her aunt's name, in the magazine, and Violet has always had this secret dream of being able to meet her fashion designer aunt one day. But her father has always forbidden it. Violet's brother Hugh is looking at the mail and hands Violet a letter that looks like a conscription letter that tells Violet she needs to go to the conscription office next week in Canterbury. Violet is not happy with the idea of having to do factory work and wants to do her part for the war by getting married and having sons who will govern the country. Hugh tells Violet that if she really wants to do her part for the war, that Violet should go and be a part of the sewing circle and not just be a figurehead of the sewing circle. So Violet agrees to go to the next meeting. Cressida was sleeping and she heard the bombs being dropped and she got out of her house just in time. As she was running, she saw that the bombs had also destroyed her design house. She was told to go to the Air Raid Precaution Center. When she got there, she was asked if she had anywhere to go, and she immediately said no. With her friends here in London, she felt she couldn't rely on them, and she couldn't think of asking her niece and nephew for a place to stay. Cressida realizes that she has nothing left but her life. She decided to call her niece and nephew at Aldhurst Manor, and they told her that she is welcome to stay as long as she likes. Violet is very excited to meet Cressida. Since Cressida is a designer, Violet invites Cressida to the sewing circle. At first, Cressida doesn't want to go, but then Violet tells her who's going to be there. One person is Grace Carlisle, who is the daughter of Ben, and his wife died about 10 years ago. Ben is a friend that Cressida had growing up, so Cressida decides that maybe she will go to the sewing circle after all. At the sewing circle, Grace pulls out her dress to see what the ladies can do. As they are discussing what they should do, Violet and Cressida walk in. Cressida sees what they are working on and makes the suggestion to take Grace's dress apart to see how much good fabric is left and how much they can save. Once they get the dress apart, Cressida offers to help Grace with the dress and tells her to come to Aldhurst Manor on Friday at 8 p.m. Grace agrees to come work on the dress, but as she thinks back, she remembers the last time that she was at Aldhurst Manor and saw Hugh. Hugh's father, Eustace, had said, "What's that dreadful vicarage daughter doing here? Get her out." As Cressida finds herself helping Grace with her dress, the sewing circle finds themselves mending wedding dresses for not only local brides, but brides across the country. A fact that I found really interesting that was mentioned in the author's note but wasn't part of the story said, Eleanor Roosevelt heard about the shortage of wedding dresses and appealed to American women to donate their dresses to fellow brides in Britain, leading to the establishment of a large, more organized pool. The Auschwitz Photographer by Maurizio, Onnis, and Luca. Crippa. In Poland in 1939, Willem Brass is deported to Auschwitz-Birkenau concentration camp for being a political activist. His prisoner number is 3444. He has been assigned to work as the camp's photographer in the Political Department of Identification Services and take identity pictures of prisoners as they arrive by the trainload. Brass soon discovers that his photography skills are in demand by the Nazi guards as well. They ask him to take personal portraits of themselves so that they can send them home to their families and girlfriends. Behind the camera, Brass is safe from the terrible fate that so many Auschwitz prisoners face. But over the course of his 5 years as a photographer, he captures many of the horrifying scenes of Auschwitz. These scenes will change him forever. From 1941 to 1945, he photographed and developed approximately 40,000 to 50,000 photographs. Many times the Nazis asked him to swear allegiance to Hitler by betraying his friends, his country, and everything. Brass always refused. There are many trigger warnings in this book, and I'm just going to name a few. So if you don't want to hear about them, you can just click the next timestamp in the video, and that's just in the description. So since this is a book about Auschwitz, there's obviously death. There are also pictures in the book, and I'm not referring to the kind of pictures that are on the front cover. The kind of pictures I'm talking about is where the doctors are doing medical experiments and they are documented with pictures. There are also descriptions of the doctors doing the medical procedures on the prisoners. And there was one other section that I will mention is where they talked about skinning a person. Now, they didn't say whether they skinned this person alive or after they were dead, but they wanted a specific thing from the person, and so I would assume with this specific thing that they wanted, that they killed him first and did not use it as a method of torture, and then skinned the person after they were dead. Now, in saying all of this, I will say that this is the most powerful book that I've ever read about Auschwitz. The Hiding Place by Corrie ten Boom. Corrie ten Boom and her sister are unmarried daughters who live with their father in Holland, who is a Christian watchmaker in the early 1900s. During the Nazi occupation in the late 1930s, the family adapts their business to harbor Jewish refugees as they become involved in the underground movement. Corrie dedicates her time and attention to helping these persecuted people. She also takes many risks in the process. Eventually, the entire family is captured and taken to Germany. Corrie and her sister Betsy are taken to Ravensbrück. Corrie follows the example of her sister Betsy, who even praises God for the fleas. Corrie realizes that this life she is living is not in vain and that there is a purpose in all of this. This is a very powerful book of a family who depended on God no matter what came their way. Before I talk about the next two books, I want to talk about the movie The Blind Side. The Blind Side is based off of the book The Blind Side by Michael Lewis that I have not read, but I have watched this movie and it is now one of my favorite movies. I will also say this movie is based on a true story. 17-year-old Michael Oher has been in foster care due to his mother's drug addiction, and every time he gets placed in a new foster home, he runs away, and now the state has lost track of him. His friend's father, on who Michael has been sleeping on his couch, asks Bert Cotton, the football coach of Wingate Christian School, to help enroll his son, Mike. Impressed by Mike's size and athleticism, Cotton gets him admitted despite his academic grades. Later, Michael is befriended by a younger student named Sean Tuohy Jr., or SJ for short. The school staff tell Michael that his father has died, apparently due to an accident. One night, Leanne, SJ's mother, sees Michael walking down the street, shivering in the cold without a jacket. When Leanne learns that Michael plans to spend the night outside the school gym shivering in the cold, she offers that Michael stay the night at her house, and Michael agrees. The next morning, Leanne sees Michael walking away and asks him where he's going. Michael says he has nowhere to go, so Leanne asks him to spend Thanksgiving with her family. Slowly, Michael begins to become a member of the Tuohy family. In saying all of this, the first book I want to talk about is In a Heartbeat by Leanne and Sean Tuohy. After the movie, Leanne and Sean wrote a book about what happened in their own words. The first section talks about the popcorn theory. You can't help everyone, but you can help and make a difference in the lives of people that pop up right in front of you. And they talked about that's exactly what happened with Michael. They didn't go looking to adopt a third kid. There was just a need that popped up right in front of them, and they stepped in to help. The next two chapters talk about what it was like for Leanne and Sean growing up. It was very interesting to hear their backstories. And then the next 4 chapters, they just talked about their life in general, about their kids, and what life was like with Michael and inviting him into their family. Between each chapter, there is a few pages from different guests. They had each of their kids, Collins, SJ, and Michael, write something, but they also had Tim McGraw and Sandra Bullock write something, since Tim McGraw played Sean in The Blind Side and Sandra Bullock played Leanne in The Blind Side. This book also talks about the interactions that they had with the actors. The other book I want to talk about is I Beat the Odds by Michael Oher. This book is Michael's story. He just doesn't talk about moving in with Leanne and Sean, but he starts at the very beginning of his story. He starts talking about when he lived with his mom and siblings, then going to foster care, and what it was like for him in school. He also talked about what it took for him to be able to play sports in high school at the private Christian school he was going to, and the dedication that he had to give to his studies in order to be able to play sports. He then moves on and talks about the Tuohys and how they played a role in helping him achieve his dream. He then talks about going to college and playing football, and then being a first-round pick for the NFL draft in 2009, which changed his life. Michael gives advice that you can make something of your life. Just because you started off at a certain place doesn't mean you have to end there. I loved both of these books, and I highly recommend both of these books. These next 3 books that I'm going to talk about are from the series Amish Cooking Class. The first book in the series is The Seekers by Wanda E. Brunstetter. Heidi is an Amish woman. She and Lyle have been married for 8 years and have no children. Lyle is against adopting children. Heidi has decided to teach Amish cooking lessons in her house every second Saturday for 6 weeks. 5 people answer the advertisement. Charlene is engaged and does not know how to cook, so she takes lessons so that she can learn to cook. Kendra has been estranged from her family because she got pregnant out of wedlock, so she takes a class because she thinks it would be something fun to do. Loretta is a widow with 2 kids who is interested in the Amish way of life. Eli is also a widow who needs to learn to cook for himself. And the last person that joins is Ron. Ron has decided to park his RV on Heidi and Lyle's property because he has nowhere else to go. During the class, the participants share about the excitements and disappointments of their lives. They solve a mystery, and there is even some romance that stirs. We follow the lives of all these individuals in the cooking class and also outside of the cooking class as they live their daily lives. Blessing by Wanda E. Brunstetter. In this second book, Heidi has decided to host another cooking class, but this time with 6 different people. Nicole is a teenager helping her divorced dad cook for her family. Lisa is a caterer who is in need of new recipes. Todd is a food critic possibly interested in giving a review for this class. Bill always gets stuck hunting for his friends. Allie was given this class as an unwanted gift. And Lance is Heidi's mailman. In this class, friendships and romances are formed and hearts are healed, including Heidi's. There are also appearances from some of the members who took Heidi's first cooking class, so even though this book is a completely different set of characters, we still follow the storylines from the first book. The Celebration by Wanda E. Brunstetter. In this 3rd and final Amish cooking class series book, Heidi has decided to host another Amish cooking class, but this time it's for kids. Miranda is a single mother with 2 kids, but her husband Trent is trying to win her heart back so that he can move back home. Denise has a spoiled daughter named Cassidy. Velma and her family have just moved close by and are struggling financially. Darren is a firefighter and single dad, and Ellen is a nurse and a single mom. Just like in the first 2 books, romances and friendships are formed, hearts are healed, and there are also some mentions or appearances of characters who took the first or second class. I really enjoyed this series. The storyline was very simple, but I felt like I was reading about the daily lives of real people. So if you're looking for a series that's simple and laid back and involves friendships and romance and cooking, then this would be the series for you. Like Dandelion does, by Karen Kingsbury. Jack and Molly Campbell have a 4-year-old son named Joey. They adopted him as a baby after his mother, Wendy Porter, was in an abusive relationship with a man named Rip. When Joey was born, Rip was in jail. Wendy needed Rip's signature to be able to give Joey up for adoption. Wendy knew that Rip would never sign the papers, so Wendy forged Rip's signature. 4 years later, Rip gets out of jail and Wendy tells Rip about the baby. When Rip finds out, he wants to get Joey back and have permanent custody. So Wendy and Rip go to the social worker and tell the social worker that Rip's signature was forged, but they are not sure who did it. They say it was probably someone in the prison. The social worker takes this case before the judge, and the judge declares that since the documents were forged, the adoption is fraudulent and orders custody to go back to Wendy and Rip after 4 weekend visits. This devastates Jack and Molly, and they will try to do everything in their power to keep their son, even if it means doing something illegal. Thanks for watching this video. If you haven't already, make sure to comment some of your recent reads down below. Also, don't forget to subscribe to my channel so that you don't miss any future videos I post. Also, feel free to like and share this with anyone you think might enjoy. Thanks for watching!